Welcome, one and all, from wherever you're joining from around the world. Thank you for joining me in session 14 of the Living Well series. This is the penultimate day of our 15-day series that I promised. A lot of you have reached out and asked me to continue this, so we will see it. I'll just tune in to myself, tune into Source and see. I'll announce tomorrow as to exactly what the logistics of the future gatherings are going to be. But for now, let us enjoy this moment of being here together. I want to kick this off with a story. Long time ago, there was a kingdom. And in that kingdom, there was once a play that came in. So a moving, roving play that came in. And it was a very successful play. A lot of people loved the play. But one day, suddenly, a little girl who was the main character in the play, she gets sick and she dies. And everybody is really heartbroken. They're very disappointed. A lot of sadness in the kingdom. And then the queen comes up with an idea. She realizes that her son, who's also a 5-year-old boy, is about the same height and size and everything as the girl who passed away. She says, why not I replace my son to play that role? So she goes in and dresses him up in the girl's costume, and he learns his part, goes out and does the play, and it is a super success. So now everybody is really happy. He becomes like a star of the show. Now, to celebrate this extreme success, the queen calls in the best artists from the kingdom and asks that he create a portrait of this actress, this girl, actually, who's a boy, in the costume. So then the artist does his thing and he creates this beautiful portrait. A long time passes. Now the little boy grows up. Now he's a prince and he becomes a king. And then the lady, the mother, queen, she gets old and she dies. So one day, the king is walking around in his palace, and he notices that there is a particular cellar that he has never visited before. So he decides he wants to go open up and see what's in the cellar. And he starts looking around. There's a lot of old artifacts that his parents and grandparents have collected. And on the wall, lo and behold, he finds a painting, a beautiful painting of a young girl. And he looks at it. As he stares at the painting, he starts to fall in love with that girl. He's really enamored. And then he looks below, and to his astonishment, he noticed there's a date on it. And he notices that the date tells him that it was back in a time when he was probably also about that age. So he assumes that that girl is now grown up and she's a beautiful young lady. And now he's all the more enamored. There's a lot of infatuation. So then he sets out to look far and wide to find this young lady. And he cannot find her. And then he comes back with sadness, and then that sadness lingers in him. And one day, the old minister notices that he can't really hold back anymore. He comes to the king and tells him, listen, I've been watching you. There seems to be some sadness. What's the matter? And the king says, oh, nothing. He just brushes it off. And then the next day, the minister comes back and says, what is the matter? Tell me. Oh, it's a private matter. I can't talk to you about things like this. Then he comes back the next day and says, okay, now listen, I will help you if you tell me, if you share this, because I know that you don't have much family left. And so let me see what I can do. So then he finally confides and says, okay, listen, come with me. I've fallen in love with a woman. And he says, who is this woman? He says, come, let me show you where I only have a picture of her. So he goes, takes her to that cellar, takes him to the cellar and shows the picture of this painting. And then the minister is baffled. He says, what are you talking about? This is a little girl. How can you be in love with a little girl? She says, no, look down below. Look at that date. And he says, look, that tells me that this was way back when, where this girl is probably about the same age as me. And today she must be a beautiful young lady. And I really want to marry her. And then this minister has a flashback. Yes, he goes back and recalls what happened that many years ago. He remembers the episode of the death and the play, and then the replacement, his mother, how she steps in, and then he says, listen, man, this is not somebody else. This is you. And upon hearing this revelation, that this picture that he was enamored with, this character that he fell in love with, he was so infatuated with this personality that he just realizes there isn't somebody like that. It's basically a reflection of himself. In 1 second, how all that craving, the desire, the infatuation vanished in this character. Ask yourself this question. When did you experience when a piece of wisdom, when some revelation, when the truth was seen, in 1 second, it changed you? You don't have to be convinced. You don't have to look any further. You don't need any more proof. Whatever your old way of being and thinking and doing were, it completely shifted. And the second inquiry I ask that you do is, what is it that you're avoiding? What is it that you are preventing yourself from seeing the truth that may trigger in such a transformation for you to let go, for you to be a different you? So now I'm going to dive into our very powerful meditation, which is the meditation on death, as some of you requested. I've been promising it, and finally the day has come. And I particularly chose today because it's the day of the full moon. The full moon, as I mentioned to you before, has the ability, has the magnetic pull. So when somebody sits down in meditation on a full moon night, it is all the more powerful. So let us today use this as an opportunity to relinquish those emotions, those weights, this baggage, this anger, the resentment, the negativity, the old habits that I want to get rid of. Let's surrender that to the new moon, to the full moon, so that we start with a new beginning. So before we jump into the meditation, I ask that you dive into your body first. And so today, the stretching exercise I ask you to do is raise your hands and make them perpendicular, the upper arms perpendicular to the floor. The lower arms parallel, perpendicular to the body, parallel to yourself. Okay, just like as you're seeing in the screen here. And as you're exhaling, squeeze the chest, bringing your elbows together. And as they come as close together as possible, raise them just 1 inch. Hold the breath and inhale as you stretch it out again. Let's repeat that a couple more times. Squeeze, breathing out. Raise as you come close, hold your breath, and then breathe in. One last time, stretch, feeling a nice pull in the back. Raise your arm and then bring yourself back. And let us now dive into the heart space. With your eyes open or closed, using breath as the anchor, let us turn our attention within. Going into our heart space with each passing breath. I use this as an opportunity to slow down, to tune in, and seeing what needs to heal. Every living creature knows that the sum total of all of its pulsations, it's limited. Every day ends with darkness, and things must get done today or they will not happen at all. Think about it. If nothing stopped you from following your dreams, your life would probably be very different. This is what the dying learn. Dying makes our worst fears come forward to be faced directly. It helps us to see that different life is possible. And in that vision, takes the rest of our fears away. Unfortunately, by the time this fear is gone, most of us are too sick or too old to do those things that we would have done before had we not been afraid. So one lesson becomes clear. We must transcend our fears while we can still do those things we dream of. To transcend fear, we must move somewhere else emotionally. We must move into love. And as you become self-aware, dropping in, ignoring any external stimuli for just a few more minutes, ignoring any chatter internally and any emotional waves that may pass through you. Just observe being. Being alive. Aware. Aware of the self. All that you seek outside yourself, you already have within you. Everything that you do is motivated by a personal desire that only seeks one thing: the contentment that comes from feeling your inner peace and the giving of the energy that you are, which is love. You are love in essence. When you see this and know this, You recognize that all seeking is simply a search for the self, and that you might have been looking in the wrong direction. It is a psychological fact that death is life's door. No power can save any of us from walking through that threshold one day. The Buddha said, "Of all the footprints, those of the elephant is supreme. And of all the meditations, the meditation on death is supreme." Imagine you have died. You're looking down on your body. After all the formalities, your body is cremated. You are liberated, in no pain. You're selfless. You are light. And you are conscious. The role that has been associated with for so long does not exist anymore. You have moved on. Watch the drama from beyond as a detached observer. Watch the play continuing and unfolding like a film in which your role does not exist anymore. But the play continues. Watch those people who are near and dear to you move on with their lives. They will be okay. I am okay. And the play continues as the seasons come and go. Observe how you're feeling right now. When you see your life against the horizon of death, notice if you see anything that is keeping you from living your life to the fullest, following your dreams. What do you need to release to walk your path of truth? Under this full moon, it is energetically the time to let go and release what is not needed and what's not serving me anymore. Whether it's old emotions, certain relationships, past hurts, patterns, ways of thinking, doing, belief systems. Release this to the full moon. See yourself liberated from this old baggage and walking your path of truth. And as we come towards the end of this meditation, there's actually no end to meditation, but just this formal, closed-eyed sitting practice. Ask yourself this question: what has death taught me about life? What is something that death has taught me about life? So whenever you're ready, at your own pace, coming back into the circle, I'd like for you to share the answer that came up. What is something that death has taught you about life? Seeing lots of answers. And while I read out these answers, I invite you to also think about any questions that you want to pose today. So I'm seeing to be fully present in every moment. Live the life joyfully. Yes, life is simple and beautiful. We make it complicated and ugly. Share my life freely. Yes. End of our role in the play. Yes, very true. And the play continues and the actor moves on to play a different role, but that role is over. Correct, Professor Redena. Lauren says, I love all of it, listening to your stories, meditations, but you won't end after 15 days, will you? Question mark. Yeah, we'll talk about that in a second. Let's talk about this. Lessons from death. Go light, don't carry baggage. Yes, very good, Ranjani. Life can be short. Live your calling. Yes, Nosheen. Gyani says, how wonderful life would be if every moment remember that it's the last moment. Yes, every year we should think of it. If this was the last year, how would I spend it? Beautiful. Joe says, live life fully till you die. Live life till you die. So, in other words, fully. Beautiful. Archana says the same thing. We can be lost. We can lost at any time. We can lose it any time. We need to live now to its fullest. Yes, Adriana. Si, hermana. Death is truth. Life is temporary. Keep doing good karma. Very good. Yes, live without regret in your actions and with kindness. Thank you, Veena. Yes. Life doesn't care how you live, but the finitude will put you into perspective how you should have at the end. Do that today. Yes, Jonathan. Yes, that's the whole point of this practice. And then I'm getting some more messages. Create pleasant memories to leave behind once you go away. Yes. Thank you, Shivani. Live your passion. Yes. Margarita says, love fully and live meaningfully. Enjoy every day as you never know when death will come. Let go of all the attachment to life so I can move on to death. Oh, wow, Lauren, that's pretty powerful. Yeah. Maya says, right now is the right place to be. Live it vividly. Yes. Fantastic. So there are lots more. Oh, there's 20 more messages. So let's see if I might come back to it, but I'm also very curious to see what questions you have put out here. So I'm going to take questions from people who haven't asked before. So somebody called Mucky has joined and asked the question, I decided to live each day as if it was my last day when I was 11. Am I really odd? No, you're not odd. You're very even. And that's a very profound realization that comes to many, not 10 years into their life, but probably 10 years at the end of, towards the end of their life, or if even that. So I did a talk about this in, I think it was 2 days ago, where I talked about the hierarchy of human needs. Somebody asked the question and I got into the article, and I believe that article was shared on the WhatsApp group. I hope you're part of the WhatsApp group and seeing all the lovely summaries that Shivani puts together and links and this and that. So there was a link to that. So very quickly, I just want to pick the specific point that I mentioned that day, which is, you see, life is a continuum. We continue, the soul continues to live. The body perishes at the end of this process called death. So the point I was making that day was that as we go through our spiritual evolution, right, from the stage of I, me, myself to the be seen, be heard, and then the we, which is at the top of the pyramid, the transcendence, it happens over many lifetimes. So this is a journey, this is a pursuit that we are on that may take many lifetimes to realize, which means when we start this new costume, new life, new chapter, new role, whatever you want to call it, we are picking up where we left off. So when we may be at a slightly different rung of the ladder, so to speak, than people around us, higher or lower. So it is not surprising that therefore we see savants. You know, savants are people who have these incredible gifts. And I'm not saying we need to be savants. We all have gifts and talents and experience that we come with. And some of us realize at an early age, like the savants do, they become pianists at the age of 10. Some people graduate from medical school at the age of 12. Or some people write concertos, etc. Mathematicians. I was reading about Ramanujam today, and he's an incredible mathematician. Till today, some of the theories that he's put out, people are still grappling to understand. He died very young, and this was many, many decades ago. But you know, there are these savants. There's real life people that we probably see even around us. And so just like that, there's a part of that within me that I have come to this point in the journey, having made certain effort in my evolutionary process. So it's not so unusual that at certain young age, one realizes. Very good. So, but the thing is to not fall asleep to that, to realize that this is a gift, not an oddity. You know how people will start labeling people as, you know, you're weird, man, you know, this is so strange what you do. It's not weird. This is your journey. This is who you are. So the thing that I was recommending that day, Maki, is that go find your tribe. You know, there's other people on the planet, other people in your community, in your town, in your state. Online nowadays, it's so convenient to find any kind of groups that you want so that you nurture yourself. You know, if you think about people like Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, Mother Teresa, these people were not afraid of death. When they took on these tremendous challenges to relieve themselves, their community, their country, whatever, from certain oppression, they knew that the threat is very real for them to be killed. But you know what? These were all very spiritual people too, because they knew that sometimes certain pursuits take longer than a lifetime to achieve. So I rest my case with that. Next question. Let's see, I have, okay, so Sahej has not asked a question yet. So let's take her question next. Some people believe in reincarnation. It is our first life in a series of lives. Is this our first life in a series of lives, and or how do we know which number of life we're on? That's a great question. So I can only try to share with you that, you know, just looking at the spectrum with which, you know, I just described the spectrum, right? From this thing about being completely self-centered to somebody who looks at us, or me, being part of a larger ecosystem. Therein will be a clue, but there's also another clue that will, to me, that has served me in my journey and my understanding is the brightness of the star. If you think about certain people are, when they come into this world, they come with a bang. I mean, they're so beautiful, they're so eloquent, they're so charismatic, talented. And when they speak something, when they say something, when they put some post on the internet, whatever, right? People are just enamored. They clamor for this person to be seen and to be heard. So that kind of enigma is a star that is fresh, that is bright. Whereas certain people, or over time, we lose a little bit of that and we become more real. So we're not living off of our, that puppy fat, so to speak. You know what I mean? That halo effect. We start becoming real as life. When I say life, it's lifetimes, but I'm talking about the journey of the soul. The school of hard knocks, as they say, reality begins to set in. And so now when I get up on stage, people are not just like swooning and start fainting, right? I need to be real. I need to become more grounded in what I say and do and, understand things. So somewhere in there between these two concepts that I shared with you, one can figure out where they are in the spectrum of the journey of life. All right, so let's take a question from Gurpreet. She asks, I don't know what the dying soul does after death, but it is tough on survivors who grieve. How does one deal with that? Moving on, what means what? Yes. So let me share something with you about my own spiritual journey. When I first moved to Austin, Texas, as I mentioned, I'm at university there. So while I was studying, I also had my spiritual awakening, and I was under the tutelage of a oncologist. If you don't know what that means, is a cancer specialist in the US Army. So she was my guide in the spiritual journey. And she would tell me stories about spirituality, a lot of concepts there, but also she would tell me about her profession as a cancer doctor, cancer specialist. Every day she's dealing with death. And for her duration of time of being both a spiritual person and somebody who is responsible for death and for the people who are going to be left behind after the death, she says the hardest thing when a soul is leaving the body is not the soul's realization that the body is not functioning anymore. It's putrefied, it's decayed, it's not serving me, it's pain more than anything else. I have to move on. But you know what holds that soul back and continues the suffering, prolongs it? It's those people around that you're asking about. So it is the selfishness. I'm getting to the point. So I'm not trying to beat about the bush, getting to the point. It is the selfishness of the people who are going to be left behind and say, how are we going to continue without you? What is that void going to, who's going to fill that? How am I going to, be able to do what you were doing for me or be there for me that I was expecting you to fulfill that part of me? So she says a lot about death counseling when somebody is really sick. It's really not even about the person. It's about the relatives. And once you are able to counsel them, make them comprehend the same meditation that we just did, that's a threshold that everybody has to go through, regardless of how rich, famous, powerful you think you are. And what happens in that process is exactly what the meditation said, which is it is the end of a role, not the end of the soul. The soul continues. And so some of our practices, especially those of us who come from the East and those who have studied Eastern philosophy, understand this intrinsically. For us, it's in our DNA to be able to comprehend this, but then we forget. We get into this attachment business because, again, we don't keep up our practice, the things that the sages and saints have been telling us for thousands of years. It's there in all of our scriptures. We watch it on TV, in our Ramayans and the Mahabharats and, this show and that show. But then, when it comes to practice, there's no practice. And therefore, when you're faced with that moment, whether it's yourself or somebody else, extreme fear and the fear of the unknown. What are you talking about unknown? This has been documented for millennia. This has been exposed. There's plenty of resources, both in the East and West. but it has evidence about what we're talking about. So it is the need for practice. So please take this meditation, take this episode that we're recording right now, share it with people. Share with people who are on either side, either people who are going to experience loss or have experienced loss, and you'll see it'll serve them well. It's really about looking at it from that place, which unfortunately not for education systems. Our modern education systems don't talk to us about something that is an absolute definite. It's a guarantee in life that we all have to deal with it. But there is the vast unknown. Okay, great question. All right, so there is a couple of questions and we'll wrap. The end of the role of a mom when kids are little is hard to imagine. The actors who continue to play after the end of the role of the mom are deeply impacted. My goal in life is just to be a good mom. Yes, be a good mom, but also be a mom that teaches what we are learning here to your children and to your children's friends, right? That we all have to deal with this. And there's no guarantee, as many of you commented, there's no guarantee. You don't know when that day is going to come. Nobody is, got it out marked on the calendar and say, this is when my time's going to be up. It could be anybody. It could be the child going, or it could be the mom going, or the dad, or anybody else. So perhaps having a conversation like you have about sex education or about coronavirus. Somebody was asking me the other day on this forum, how do I teach my 4-year-old son about what's going on, why we are quarantined, right? You need creative ways. So you need creative ways to talk about this as well. Right, and then the last question I'm going to take is, when life passes on, can they still be with you? When nature shows up as a sign of someone who has passed, is it really this person's soul? All right, okay, folks, now I'm going to share with you another very personal story, which I have not shared with anybody. Okay, so premiere disclosure. So my father passed away 5 years ago, and I was in America, and I got a call from my aunt, who's also listening right now. She's here, she signed in, and she told me that this news, and this was about late in the night. I forget exactly the time, but it was late in the night here in America. And I got the news about my father passed. And so I got on the phone with a travel agent, a friend of mine, and said, listen, you got to put me on the first flight tomorrow. I'm the only son. I need to go do my father's last rites and get me there as soon as possible. So anyway, so she gets me on a plane next morning, 11 o'clock, and I find myself flying to India and then, go there. And so there's a couple of things I want to share with you. So when I land there, mom is crying, and there's all my relatives already, obviously the ones in India have already arrived, and they're obviously doing this, the usual, right? And then I look at mom and I say, listen, what are you talking about? What is this, sad crying face? He had a good life. He was unwell and you took good care of him. You did what you needed to do. And he passed very peacefully. In the comfort of our home, in the comfort of his bedroom, having taken a shower, having been well cared for, what else can you ask for? And at that moment she stopped, and then after that, I was there for, 2 or 3 weeks after that. I didn't see a tear in her eye. So you see, when you are stable, you can help somebody else. Everybody gravitates towards energy. And if you fall apart, then you're only adding to the mess, adding to the lack of groundedness, right? So that's the first lesson from that. The second lesson from that is more directly to your question. So then we had the ceremony. My father's body was cremated, and then I had to go put the ashes in the river Godavari. I had to leave all my clothes there, take a bath. You don't bring anything back from that. That's kind of the ritual in Hindu families. So then I came back home that night, and I was sleeping in my parents' home in a bedroom by myself. And that night, I felt a presence in the room. I just woke up. I just was woken up from deep sleep because I had a long day. Imagine carrying your father's body, cremating it, taking the ashes, driving to the river, which is, I don't know, 2 hours or 3 hours away, coming back, taking a cold shower there, coming back. Then there's family, then you do all that. And I was exhausted. But then in the middle of the night, I can't remember, 12 to some AM somewhere. So I feel the presence of this being. And I'm like, okay, who is it? And I felt it was my father's soul in the room. And because you see, my father's soul had come to communicate with me. Why? Because we hadn't had a chance to say goodbye. Unlike my mom and some of my other relatives who were in town, I was living halfway across the world. And my father's soul silently, like telepathically, was telling me that you did what you need to do. I am okay. And I want you to be okay. And moved on. And I said yes, and it moved on. Peace. Complete tranquility. Never has that revisiting happened because both of us have reconciled to what just happened, right? Now, let me flip this on its head and tell you something else. I know we're going past time, but you may be interested in this. What is the role of making peace that I just shared with you? Because there are certain times souls do not have a way to end this chapter, to bring closure. That's when you have souls that linger. You understand? They can't move on because there is something unfinished business that unfortunately they have lost the body and the capabilities to be able to tell the message, put something to close, whatever it is, that thing that is they're holding them back. So that's why we have in many Eastern traditions, you have a way of having a medium. You have a way of making peace, doing different rituals to send that soul, even if it's unwise, to let it know that it's okay for it to move on. Okay? So that was a long question, but I think it was probably very relevant to today's topic. And I see that you're all, nobody's leaving. Everybody is right here. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your time. So folks, that brings me to the discussion about tomorrow. Tomorrow is going to be the last of this 15-day series. I'm not going to say it's the end, but let me just sit with it. Let me just meditate on it and see. Maybe I need a few days to kind of collect myself together before we can start a regular thing. Is that okay? Is that okay for me to take a break? I want you to say yes or no. Because some of you are telling me about, I will go into whatever, like withdrawal, and I'm addicted to this and this and that. So everybody's saying, okay, so thank you for sharing. Okay, so yes. So I just want to make one announcement. So what I've done is I have put together for all of you, for the benefit of summarizing everything, this beautiful Q&As and discussions and meditations. I put together a document, a gift, a PDF that I will share with you when we finish our last session tomorrow, which for you to take, and you can download it from, it's going to be on my website. You click on it, you get the download. And then it's a quick, like a 5-step simple guide to maintain your well-being during this coronavirus isolation period, right? So this will include all of the things we talked about: physical, mental, relational, and so on. Okay. And then I encourage you to then share it with friends and so on. But so let's get there when we get there, which is tomorrow. But I want you to please take away from today is that what can you not postpone anymore with looking at life to be something that's a finite element. And second thing is, what is it that you want to give up on this beautiful full moon night that you do will make you lighter and keep you be able to walk your truth. With that, I'd like to wrap this event. Thank you again for your attention. Until I see you tomorrow, be well.